Listen carefully, because the nickel sitting in your drawer right now might not be just an old coin, it could be a hidden jackpot. Most people walk past Jefferson nickels without a second look, but inside a few rare dates from the early decades lies unbelievable value. These coins hide secret mint errors, rare over-mint marks, and ultra-low mintages that only true collectors recognize. And here's the crazy part. One tiny detail, a small letter, or a barely visible line on the steps can turn a dusty old nickel into a coin worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Today, we're diving into the top 3 old rare Jefferson nickels that people often ignore, but collectors dream of finding. So if you're ready to discover which nickels can transform pocket change into real money, then stay locked in, because this list might change the way you look at every coin you touch. The story of the 1959 Jefferson nickel begins long before the coin itself was struck, because its roots go back to the late 1930s when the United States Mint was searching for a new design to honor Thomas Jefferson and his historic home, Monticello. The original Jefferson nickel debuted in 1938 after the Mint replaced the Buffalo nickel, which had been difficult to strike and had become worn out in its dies. Felix Schlag won the design competition with a portrait of Jefferson facing left on the obverse and a clean architectural representation of Monticello on the reverse. This design remained unchanged for decades, and by the time the year 1959 arrived, the Jefferson nickel had already become a familiar coin in American hands, symbolizing continuity, stability, and national heritage. When the Mint began production in 1959, the United States was in a period of social change and economic growth. The Cold War shaped national priorities, and the country was moving into a new, technological age. But despite this, the coins circulating in everyday commerce remained simple, consistent, and rooted in tradition. The 1959 Jefferson nickel is part of the regular copper-nickel series minted after the wartime silver alloy had ended in 1946. These regular composition coins continued the classic Schlag design and were struck primarily for daily use, meaning millions were produced. The Philadelphia Mint was responsible for most of the 1959 mintage and coins produced. They carry no mint mark, while the Denver Mint added its distinctive D-mint mark to its share of the year's production. Collectors often study the striking quality of these nickels because dies during this era sometimes produced softer details, especially in the step lines on Monticello. Full step examples from the late 1950s can be challenging to locate in truly high grades because the Mint was more focused on quantity for circulation than on precision for collectors. As the 1959 Jefferson nickel entered circulation, it became part of everyday transactions in grocery stores, gas stations, schools, and workplaces across the country. It was a small piece of metal that represented the value of 5 cents, yet it also reflected American history, art, and identity. The portrait of Jefferson used during this era was based on a sculpture by Jean-Antoine Houdon, and it conveyed the stately calm and intellectual bearing of the third president. On the reverse, Monticello stood as a symbol of Jefferson's legacy in architecture, agriculture, and political thought. These elements made the coin more than a piece of currency because it was a miniature tribute to a foundational period in American history. In the year 1959 itself, the United States Mint operated with efficiency, producing coins to meet the needs of a growing economy and widespread commerce. The Jefferson nickel remained a stable denomination during a time when inflation was relatively low and the 5-cent coin retained strong purchasing power compared to later decades. For collectors today, the 1959 Jefferson nickel holds importance as a mid-century issue representing a period of post-war confidence and national growth. Within the series of Jefferson nickels, the coins dated 1959 do not contain major design changes, and therefore they fit smoothly into the long-running pattern of the type. However subtle, variations in strike, quality planche condition, and die state create opportunities for collectors who enjoy searching for particularly sharp examples. High-grade coins with full steps on Monticello are especially desirable because they showcase strong die pressure and crisp detail, something not always common in late 1950s issues. Over the decades since 1959, many of these nickels have seen heavy wear, losing their fine details through circulation. Others may have been preserved in rolls, jars, or collections, allowing modern numismatists to study them in near original condition. The survival of mint state pieces makes it possible to examine the craftsmanship of the mint during that era and to compare it with earlier and later periods in American coinage. The composition of the 1959 nickel at 75% copper and 25% nickel produced a durable and long-lasting coin that could withstand decades of handling, and that same alloy continues to be used in modern Jefferson nickels today, showing how effective and practical the formula has been. As the 20th century advanced, the Jefferson nickel series became one of the most recognizable circulating coins in the United States. The 1959 issue serves as a marker within this long timeline representing the steady continuation of the original Schlag design prior to the major redesigns that would appear decades later in the early 21st century. Even though the 1959 nickel does not claim fame for rare varieties, it remains an essential part of the historical chain-linking pre-war, post-war, and modern American coinage. Collectors who build year sets, mint mark sets, or full-date runs always include the 1959 nickel as part of their understanding of how the series evolved through time. The date also connects to broader history in that Jefferson's legacy continued to be celebrated during an era of American optimism, cultural development, and scientific achievement, including the beginnings of the space race. Each of these historical contexts creates a backdrop for understanding the presence of the Jefferson nickel in pockets and cash registers throughout the nation. The study of the 1959 Jefferson nickel today involves appreciating the coin both as an artifact of its era and as a piece of numismatic art. The surfaces of a well-preserved example show how the metallic alloy toned over time, developing subtle shades depending on storage conditions. Some may show warm golden hues, while others remain bright with only slight signs of oxidation. Collectors often focus on the sharpness of Jefferson's hair, details the clarity of the lettering, and the presence of full steps on Monticello. These characteristics help determine the quality and desirability of a given coin. The Jefferson nickel series has long been an accessible hobby for beginners due to its affordability and the 1959 issue plays a part in introducing new enthusiasts to the world of coin collecting. Because so many were minted, they are easy to find, yet high-grade pieces can still offer a challenge, making the date appealing for collectors at all levels. In the context of a 2-hour video, the exploration of the 1959 Jefferson nickel can expand into related subjects such as the history of nickel coinage in the United States, the decisions made by the mint regarding designs and compositions, the transition from silver to wartime alloys and back again, and the role of coins as cultural symbols within daily life. The Jefferson nickel serves as a gateway to understanding the broader world of mid-20th century numismatics. The year 1959 stands as part of a stable and familiar period when American coins were produced using consistent techniques and materials before the more dramatic changes in metal composition that affected other denominations like the cent and the half-dollar in later years. Through all of this, the 1959 Jefferson nickel remains a testament to tradition, durability, and American history preserved in metal and carried from hand to hand across generations. The story of the 1968 Jefferson nickel begins during a period of transformation for the United States Mint and for American coinage as a whole, and the year 1968 stands out as a moment of renewal, adaptation, and change. To understand the full history of the 1968 Jefferson nickel, it is important to look back at the origins of the series, which began in 1938, when the nickel adopted the portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and the image of his home Monticello on the reverse. By the time 1968 arrived, the Jefferson nickel had already been circulating for 3 decades, and Americans recognized it as one of the most stable and reliable coins in the economy. However, behind the scenes, many changes were taking place at the mint, and these changes deeply influenced the 1968 issue. During the mid-1960s, the minting world was shaken by a national coin shortage driven by rapid population growth, massive increases in vending machine use, and the booming economy. As a result, the mint had temporarily removed mint marks from coins between 1965 and 1967 to discourage hoarding by collectors. This policy drastically altered the design and production practices of the mint. By 1968, the United States Mint decided it was time to restore mint marks and return to normal operations, which marked a major shift and made the 1968 Jefferson nickel a significant entry in the series. The year 1968 also marked the reopening of the San Francisco Mint as a facility, dedicated to producing proof coins, reopening after many decades of closure. This meant that proof Jefferson Nickels for 1968 would now carry the S mint mark and would be struck under more controlled and refined conditions compared to earlier years. Turning to the production details, the mint struck 3 main types of Jefferson Nickels in 1968. The Philadelphia Mint struck circulation coins without a mint mark, continuing its role as the primary provider of everyday currency. The Denver Mint produced a large number of coins marked with the D mint mark, serving the western and central regions of the country with dependable nickel supply. Meanwhile, the newly reactivated San Francisco Mint prepared proof coins that were struck with mirrored surfaces, frosted devices, and a level of craftsmanship meant to appeal to collectors. These proof coins carried the S mint mark, which became an important identifier for collectors then and now. All 3 versions of the 1968 nickel were made from the standard copper-nickel alloy of the modern era, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a metal blend chosen for strength, durability, and long-term stability in circulation. Design continuity was another key point of the 1968 Jefferson nickel. The obverse still featured the classic left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, designed by Felix Schlag, whose artwork had been selected in a national competition 30 years earlier. Schlag's original design saw adjustments over the decades, but its fundamental appearance remained familiar to Americans. Jefferson's profile sits confidently with the inscriptions "Liberty, the year 1968," and the motto, "In God We Trust." The reverse features Monticello rendered with architectural precision and framed by the inscriptions "Monticello 5 cents, United States of America," and the motto, "E pluribus unum." Though unchanged in appearance, this reverse would later gain increased scrutiny from collectors as strike sharpness and die conditions varied. Collecting the 1968 Jefferson nickel introduces a fascinating perspective on minting quality during this transitional era. Coins from Philadelphia and Denver were made in large numbers, yet many examples show softer strikes around Monticello, especially on the steps. Fully struck steps, often called full steps by collectors, are highly prized because they indicate a strong, precise strike and well-prepared dies. Finding 1968 nickels with full steps, particularly from Philadelphia, can be very challenging, making such pieces highly desirable in the numismatic market. Denver issues tend to show better strikes, but still not consistently enough for easy full-step certification. Proof 1968. S nickels generally display strong detail, but even in proofs, the clarity of Monticello steps can vary, adding another layer of interest for collectors. Looking deeper into the historical background, 1968 was a time of national change, political tension, and economic shifts. In such a complex era, coins like the Jefferson nickel were quiet witnesses to everyday American life, passing through hands in grocery stores, gas stations, and workplaces. The restored mint marks of 1968 symbolized a return to stability after years of uncertainty in the coin supply. At the same time, the establishment of the San Francisco Mint as a proof facility marked an important modernization step for the mint and set the stage for decades of proof coin production that continues today. The legacy of the 1968 Jefferson nickel rests not only on its production numbers and design, but also on its role in the evolution of the series. It marked the return of traditional minting practices, the refinement of proof production, and the continuation of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. For collectors, the 1968 nickel offers many layers to explore, from varieties to strike quality to historical context. For historians, it reflects the broader economic and political landscape of the late 60s. And for viewers of your 2-hour documentary, the 1968 Jefferson nickel represents far more than a simple 5-cent piece. It becomes a window into a time of change, a symbol of national stability, and a key chapter in the continuing story of American coinage. As the story of the 1968 Jefferson nickel continues, it becomes important to understand how this single year fits into the broader economic and political climate of the United States during the late 1960s. The country was facing many dramatic shifts, advancements in technology, challenges in industry, social changes, and global tensions that shaped daily American life. Coins produced during this era, including the Jefferson nickel, reflected the government's effort to maintain consistency in the economy even as the nation navigated a time of turbulence. The nickel, which had been a stable part of commerce since the 1930s, remained essential for vending machines, public transportation, parking meters, and daily transactions. Its reliability made it a crucial piece of everyday life, and the 1968 issue was produced with the intention of reinforcing that stability. The return of mint marks in 1968 carried symbolic meaning for collectors and for the mint itself. During the coin shortage of the mid-60s, the temporary removal of mint marks had frustrated collectors who relied on mint marks to distinguish varieties and track production patterns. The restoration of mint marks allowed the hobby to regain momentum. Clubs, shows, and publications grew in popularity as collectors searched for the newly marked coins. The appearance of the D mint mark on Denver issues and the S mint mark on Ivory San Francisco proof coins reconnected collectors to traditions that had been interrupted. It also helped bring public confidence back to the mint, which had been criticized for its handling of the shortage. This historical moment helped shape the modern coin collecting community, and the 1968 nickel became one of the first coins to benefit from renewed enthusiasm. The story of the Jefferson nickel in 1971 begins in a period of transition for American coinage and economic policy as the United States was navigating changes involving inflation, metal shortages, and shifting national priorities. The Jefferson nickel itself had been in circulation since 1938 when it replaced the Buffalo nickel, and by 1971 it had become a familiar and trusted part of daily transactions across the country. The design by Felix Schlag, featuring the portrait of Thomas Jefferson, on the obverse and the Monticello building on the reverse had become one of the most recognizable images in American numismatic history. By the early 1970s, the United States Mint was dealing with increased demand for coinage as the population grew and commerce expanded. The nickel was a key denomination because it lasted longer in circulation than pennies and dimes and served as a stable mid-value coin for everyday purchases. In 1971, the Mint produced Jefferson Nickels at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities with the Denver Mint, creating the majority of the coinage. This year is particularly interesting because it falls in a time when the Mint was refining production techniques and improving machinery, leading to changes in strike quality planchet preparation and mint mark appearance. Collectors today often study Jefferson Nickels from 1971 for small variations including die-wear weak strikes and the overall clarity of Monticello's details. These factors reveal the state of minting technology during this time. The year 1971 also exists in the shadow of major national decisions, such as the ending of the Bretton Woods system and the move of the United States away from the gold standard under President Richard Nixon. Although these policies did not directly change the composition of the nickel, they influenced the broader economic environment in which the coin circulated. Rising inflation made consumers more aware of the value of money, and coins became even more essential in daily transactions. The Jefferson nickel remained composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a combination that had been used since the end of World War II after the wartime silver alloy was discontinued. This stability in composition made the nickel one of the most consistent coins of the period, and in 1971 it continued to be minted with the same metallic content. When looking closely at a 1971 Jefferson nickel, one notices the classic portrait of Jefferson facing left. Over decades, this portrait had become almost symbolic of American historical pride, linking modern currency with the legacy of the third president of the United States, who authored the Declaration of Independence and shaped early American democracy. The Monticello, on the reverse, represents architectural beauty and Jefferson's contributions to design and innovation. Throughout the 1970s, coin collectors were becoming more active and more organized. Hobby magazines, coin shows, and local collecting clubs grew rapidly, and many collectors paid close attention to yearly releases of all denominations, including the 1971 nickel. Although it was not a rare issue, it became part of many complete year sets, and decades later it serves as a snapshot of minting conditions from that time. There are also subtle differences in appearance between the Philadelphia and Denver issues. The Denver coins bear the small D mint mark on the right side of the Monticello building. These mint marks were punched by hand during this era, which means slight variations in location size and angle can be found among different coins, making them interesting to specialists today. Another aspect of the 1971 nickel that attracts attention is the quality of the strike. Some examples show strong detail in Jefferson's hair and the pillars of Monticello, while others appear softer and less defined, suggesting worn dies or high production pressure. These differences highlight the mint's ongoing struggle to balance speed with precision during large-scale production. As one moves deeper into the historical context of 1971, the Jefferson nickel becomes more than a simple piece of metal. It becomes a reflection of the cultural, economic, and technological environment of the era. Americans during this time carried these coins in pockets and purses, used them in payphones, vending machines, and everyday purchases, and relied on them without truly noticing the complex process behind their creation. Behind the scenes, mint employees were working with evolving equipment, trying to maintain quality standards while meeting national demand. The nickel remained one of the workhorses of the American monetary system, serving millions of transactions daily. Over the span of a detailed 2-hour discussion, one can explore the coin from multiple angles, including its design symbolism, minting process, production, numbers, cultural context, collecting interest, and market value. When discussing the production numbers, it is important to recognize that Denver created a significantly larger quantity than Philadelphia, which is typical for Jefferson nickels of this era, due to the Denver Mint's role in producing circulating coinage for western and central regions of the nation. The Philadelphia Mint, meanwhile, produced coins without mint marks until 1980, so the 1971 Philadelphia nickel appears plain in comparison. Collectors often compare the two types to study surface texture, strike quality, and wear patterns. Many coins from 1971 circulated heavily for decades, and today, well-worn pieces are common in pocket change. Finding a high-grade uncirculated example, especially with strong steps on Monticello, can be more challenging. The full steps designation refers to a crisp, clear strike, showing the horizontal steps on the front of the building. This detail is a key factor in grading Jefferson nickels and coins. with full steps from 1971, are significantly more desirable to collectors. Over the years, numismatics has placed increasing value on die varieties and minor errors, and the 1971 nickel is no exception. Although it is not widely known for major errors, some examples exist with die cracks off-centered strikes or repunched mint marks. These features offer extra historical insight because they show the conditions of die maintenance and mint mark application during the early 1970s. In the broader timeline of American money, the 1971 Jefferson nickel sits between older classic coins and more modern issues of the late 20th century. It maintains the traditional design that lasted until the early 2000s, when the Westward Journey series temporarily replaced the reverse design. Collectors often appreciate the continuity of this coin series, since the Schlag portrait and Monticello reverse remained unchanged for so long, preserving a sense of authenticity and heritage. As one continues exploring the coin in this narrative, the social and economic environment of 1971 becomes even more relevant. This was a year marked by cultural shifts, technological advancements, and geopolitical tensions. The Vietnam War was still ongoing, public opinion was divided, and the United States faced internal challenges about identity and direction. In such a climate, everyday objects like the Jefferson nickel served as stable, quiet reminders of national history. The presence of Jefferson's portrait reminded citizens of leadership intellect and democratic ideals, while Monticello symbolized architectural grace and American craftsmanship. These symbols carried subtle emotional weight in a time of uncertainty. The coin thus stands not only as currency, but also as a historical artifact capturing the spirit of an era. Many collectors today see the 1971 nickel as an accessible way to connect with this period. It is affordable, easy to find, and richly tied to historical context. Whether studied for errors, full steps, varieties, or simple nostalgia, it offers a valuable window into the past. The Jefferson nickel of 1971 continues to circulate in some places, though most examples in change today are heavily worn. Higher-grade pieces have found their place in albums collections or dealer inventories. Its legacy continues through the dedicated interest of collectors and historians who recognize the quiet significance of this small but meaningful coin. A full discussion allows one to explore every detail from the metal composition and minting technology to the cultural environment, economic changes, and long-term significance. In the end, the Jefferson nickel from 1971 stands as a testament to American coinage stability, municipal craftsmanship, and the enduring legacy of Thomas Jefferson, whose image continues to influence United States currency to this day. This is all we know about Jefferson nickel 1971.